What is up, YouTube people? It's your boy Patty McNinja, and this past week we got a new video game from Justin Roiland, the co-creator of Rick and Morty and Solar Opposites. The game is called High on Life, and of course, since I'm recording this video, I obviously played it and I have some thoughts. So without further ado, let's rock. High on Life was developed by Squanch Games, which is a studio that has done a few VR games in the past, but this is their first foray into a regular video game. High on Life is a sci-fi first-person shooter where the player controls a bounty hunter who must travel the galaxy to save humanity by using weapons that have a mind of their own, literally. High on Life was released on December 13th to Windows and Xbox. I played it on Game Pass day one, and I am a big fan of Rick and Morty. Not so much Solar Opposites, but I am a fan of Justin Roiland. I literally have a signed Mr. Poopy Butthole from Rick and Morty sitting on my desk as we speak. And so I saw this game announced at the Xbox showcase this past summer, and since they've only done VR games, I was really excited to actually get to play this because I don't have any ability to play VR games. And when I saw it was going to be day one Game Pass, I knew immediately that I was going to review it on this channel. All right, so let's start with what I think will be make it or break it for most people with High on Life, and that is the humor. So I am a big fan of Rick and Morty, like I said, not so much with Solar Opposites, but I think that Justin Roiland definitely has his brand of humor, and I feel like I was the target audience for this game. High on Life kind of feels like if you ordered Rick and Morty on wish.com, it is definitely a machine gun of comedy, pun intended. There are so many jokes. It's just joke after joke after joke, and a lot of them are very meta, especially when it comes to video games. There are a lot of video game jokes in this game. There's a Metal Gear Solid Psycho Mantis shout out. There's a reference to Donut County, which is a fantastic game, but I never thought I would hear a Donut County reference in a game like this. There's even an achievement that you unlock at one point when you beat a boss, and it's kind of like punishing you. That boss is punishing you for fighting him, which I thought was really funny. However, which is the case with several things, whether it's a video game or movie or whatever, that break the fourth wall, sometimes when they break the fourth wall and make a comment, a lot of times it's pointing out a trope or an issue with the game or the movie, but that doesn't mean that they actually fixed the issue. It's still there. So there's a lot of times where they'll point out that they're using a trope, or you can't do something in this game that you would expect to be able to do in other games. That doesn't make it better. It just means that you made a joke about it, but it doesn't actually fix the issue. So it's not perfect by any means, but I did enjoy the humor. And if you've been on gaming TikTok recently, I'm sure you already know this, but you can literally watch full B movies in this game. It is insane that they put an entire movie in this game that you can just sit and watch the whole thing. So they definitely have their particular brand of humor, and honestly, it got me a lot. I laughed a lot. It's not going to be everybody's cup of tea, and you can tune it down in the settings, but for me, I don't understand why you would want to do that, because the biggest draw to this game is its humor. So if you don't want to listen to these characters make these jokes, then I don't see the point of playing this game, because that's what its selling point is. And I think one of the main reasons why the comedy works so well in a High on Life is the fact that they have a ton of really talented voice actors and actresses. And as you would expect, Justin Roiland does a voice in this game. He voices Kenny, which is the main gun, the first one that you unlock. And I know this is kind of a lazy comparison, but he sounds very much like Morty to me, which makes sense because the same person does the voice for both of those characters. But even the cadence to Kenny sounds like Morty to me. But as you move along in the game, of course, you unlock more guns, which means you unlock more characters, which means there are other actors and actresses that voices those characters. characters. And at one point you unlock a shotgun type of gun, which is voiced by JP Smoove, which I thought was really cool. Eventually you unlock a gun that is voiced by Tim Robinson from I Think You Should Leave, which is awesome. I love that show. So I was happy to see him voice a character. And eventually there are some celebrity cameos at the very end of this game that I thought was pretty funny. I'm surprised that they were able to get this particular actor and actress. And so there are a lot of really talented people in this game, and it just adds to the comedy. And I loved how each gun have their own personality. They each react to the story and what's happening on screen very differently. You have the psychotic knife, appropriately named Knifey, who just wants to stab people, which I thought was hilarious. You have Squeezy, the Halo-esque Needler, who is super sassy, and I loved her attitude. But by far, my favorite gun was Creature. He's kind of this stupid, naive character who just wants everybody to be besties, and I found myself constantly trying to use him just because his personality cracked me up. It certainly doesn't hurt that Creature is voiced by Tim Robinson, who I mentioned earlier I'm a huge fan of I Think You Should Leave, and so I found myself constantly trying to use Creature over the other guns. Unfortunately, there wasn't much more to the story than the initial concept, which is kind of interesting. It's about an alien crime lord that invades Earth, and you gotta take up the mantle of a bounty hunter to stop him and his henchmen. Unfortunately, the game doesn't do a whole lot to evolve past that interesting concept. You literally don't even have a name in this game. Everyone just calls you Bounty Hunter. Kenny even makes a joke about how instead of calling you Bounty Hunter, he's just going to call you BH. The game, to give it a little bit of credit, does try to strike up some conflict between you and your guns later in the game, most of which happens while you have a sit-down dinner with Kenny at a space Applebee's, which is literally what the restaurant's called. That's the type of humor that you should expect from this game. Unfortunately, that conflict is pretty predictable and it gets wrapped up very quickly. And at this point, you're probably thinking to yourself, this is a first-person shooter. What about the combat? And there's a reason why I haven't brought it up yet. And that's because if you break this game down to its foundation, if you've ever played a first-person shooter before, you've basically played this game. Yes, the more guns you have, the more abilities you unlock, and that's cool. And the fact that the guns have their own personality is fun. But unfortunately, the enemies you fight are so mindless, I could probably have beaten this game with just Kenny. The only time this game really got hairy for me is during these moments where you kind of start to feel overwhelmed with enemies. There are areas where you just get wave after wave of enemies. But during those moments, I kind of reverted back to my time playing Halo on Legendary, where I would just sit back and pick off enemies from a distance until I could thin them out. The boss battles did break up the monotony of combat a bit, but most of them were just bullet sponges, and the actual fight itself was just the same thing over and over again, outside of one particular boss battle that is just essentially a big long drug trip, which I definitely enjoyed. The different guns having different abilities are really cool, but I wish the enemies made it worth using the guns more often. I don't think I used Squeezy for combat. I basically only used her for her platforming abilities. I mostly just rolled with Creature because he was my favorite and I thought his ability was the best. Speaking of platforming, I was surprised at how fun it was in this game. I went into High on Life with the idea that it was just going to be a first-person shooter, and at its core it is, but there is some platforming in this game and some puzzles. Both are pretty easy, but I really enjoyed them, and I think a lot of that has to do with the art direction in this game. Everything just looks really cool, and I just enjoyed the style. There's not a ton of exploration, but I did find myself wanting to kind of look around and take everything in because I just loved the style of this game. Another reason why I liked the style of this game so much was the music. I really enjoyed the lo-fi soundtrack for High on Life. I found myself constantly tapping my feet while playing this game, and cherry on top, There is a very funny final credits song as well. Doesn't really fit the same style of music as the rest of the game, but it definitely was funny, so it definitely fit in with the humor of the rest of the game, which I appreciated. While High on Life is far from a perfect game, I definitely think that it's a perfect Game Pass game. I would have been pretty pissed if I had paid full price for this. Like the Callisto Protocol, I think that it could have used a few more months to polish a few things. I personally didn't have any issues with bugs outside of my game crashing once after a boss battle. I didn't have any issues with bugs. However, I've heard a lot of complaints about people having issues with this game. I know that they dropped a pretty big update a few days after this game was released, so hopefully that fixed everything. But if you have Game Pass, I definitely think that you should give this game a shot. Play it for 30 minutes. If the humor doesn't hit with you, go ahead and uninstall it, because that's its biggest feature for me, is how funny it is. If you don't think this game is funny, then you're not going to enjoy it, because it's a pretty basic first-person shooter if you don't like the humor. So that being said, I would give High on Life 3 stars. Well, there you have it, folks. That is my review on High on Life. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, smash that like button, as the kids say. Consider subscribing. If you do subscribe, ding that bell. That way you get notified every time I post a video. I post weekly gaming related content, so if you like that type of stuff, definitely consider subscribing. But until next time, take it easy. What's up, YouTube people? It's your boy Patty McNinja, and this is my boy Yoshi, aka Kitty Boy, and we were just talking, and we agree that since you made it this far in the video, you might as well subscribe. You wouldn't want to disappoint Kitty Boy, would you?